Hello, all you wonderful people. Today, I'd like to share something about connecting with people, whether it's people at work or whether it's with family or whether it's with kids. I used to be a very nervous, anxious person around people. Sometimes still am, but I used to have a lot of uh, ideas in my mind about how I needed to be likable, how I needed to say interesting things, because I really didn't want people to turn away from me. You know, I realized that I've always wanted a deeper connection with people beyond the hello, how are you? How's your day? And so I remember what I used to do with clients, I think, people who I didn't know that well. When I was in my design business, I would turn up for meetings with clients and I would have, in my mind, sketched out a script about how to speak to them and what to speak to them about and what to say. And it made those conversations very rigid, very difficult. And if something was said that was outside of my scope of my script, I would struggle because I hadn't prepared for it. What I began to see, I guess around 10 years ago now, was that the reason I thought I needed a script, reason I thought I needed to be liked, was that I obviously didn't feel good enough. And so it was a mask I was putting on. It was a perception that I wanted them to have of me. So I began to see that this mask that I was creating was the very thing that was getting in the way of the deeper connection that I yearned for. So very, very slowly, I began to show up with people with less of a script. I'm not going to say no script because I still had this feeling of not being good enough. But I would meet new people and I would meet friends and family, and I would try and show up as empty as I could, being willing to listen to what they had to say rather than impose my script on them and my idea of how the conversation should pan out. So very slowly, I found that without this script, I was able to be curious about people. I was able to ask questions that I would never have thought of asking before. All of a sudden, without the script filling my head, my mind was free to be in the moment, free to say whatever occurred to me, as opposed to what I scripted out days before. And something very profound happened. I'm going to say it kind of transformed my relationships, transformed the way that I showed up in the world, in that I began to trust the moment. I began to trust not having to have a specific outcome to the conversation. I began to trust not needing to be liked. And that changed the whole energy of the conversation. What I saw was that the connection that I craved so much was already there. I was just covering it over with layer after layer after layer of my limiting beliefs, stories that I'd made up about who I was and stories that I made up about who they were. I began to see that I never connected with people prior to that because I was only ever connecting with my story of them, my idea of who they were and what they thought. So once free of the story, we can inhabit this beautiful space of not knowing and exploring and curiosity. There's a quote by Rumi that I think most people know that goes something like, beyond all wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. Meet me there. And it sounds to me like he was talking about that space without the story, without the agenda, without the prejudgments, without the need for an outcome. As I say, it kind of changed my life because I showed up differently. When I showed up differently, other people showed up differently. Just a thought. See you next time.